Okay, folks, welcome back. And in this video, we are going to install the TAP components on our build cluster. Okay, and once again, we are in the TAP CLI supply chain folder, and the file is out of the box basic build. Now, this is in contrast to the other supply chain types. So down here, you can see that we have testing build, or we have testing scanning. Okay, and so these would be supply chains that we could do to add these additional features. And I think I touched upon that idea in the previous video, but for our purposes, we're just going to stick with the basic. All right, so let's talk about the script. TAP version is the same, obviously. This is going to be our view subdomain and the Git catalog repository. And then we're going to go fetch our Azure Container Registry secret from AWS Secrets Manager and store off all of that information into these environment variables, such as the host name for Azure Container Registry, the username, and the secret. All right. So moving along here, we get right down to the profile itself. This is probably the simplest script of them out of the three. This is not going to take very long. So you see here that we're setting the profile to build. That tells TAP once again which components that it will install, and we can go over there and take a quick look here. So if we take a look at the reference architecture once again, this is our build profile. Okay, so these components will be installed. So moving along here now, the view domain. Why are we using the view domain from the build? Well, the view domain is necessary for build to report any scanning abnormalities from its analysis of our images and code and so forth, and it can report that back to this metadata store. Okay, so for scanning purposes, the scanning reports that to the metadata store, which is actually hosted on our view cluster. And it's hosted on the view cluster because that's where we want to see these reports. Okay, this is where we want to see the data that was generated from our scan. So the build cluster goes ahead and reports that to the view cluster. Then here in this out-of-the-box supply chain basic, we're storing the location of the registry in Azure. And we're also saying that the repository in that registry is going to be supply chain. So this is where our actual workloads are going to be uploaded. Then in the build service section, okay, we're pretty much saying the same thing. This is our Azure Container Registry location, but for your purposes, in order to build and get the images and so forth that you need, this will be the location of those container images. Okay, so moving along, that's all I really wanted to talk about from the profile there. So here's the line that's going to go ahead and execute that installation. And so once that is finished, we scroll on down, and the next thing we have to do is create a developer namespace. Now, this is just a portion in our cluster where we create a service account and give that service account access to our Azure Container Registry. So we first have to create the secret containing those credentials. And for our purposes, we're just going to set this up in a default namespace. You might want to set up different developers in different namespaces, and that is perfectly acceptable to do that. But we're going to create the service account, okay? Make sure that we associate these registry credentials along with the full secrets, all right? And scroll on down here, and then we'll bind the roles and apply this YAML configuration, and then we will be able to start building our source code. Now, since this script doesn't do really much anything different than the previous one for our view cluster, I'm just going to go ahead and run this offline, and then we'll return and finish off with our two run clusters.